Alright, thank you all and welcome back. I hope that the first part was understood. That was an introduction to understanding what open-minded was. Even though it is pretty self-explanatory within its title, I wanted to address a lot of things of what exactly it is and how it can be applied. In this episode, we're going to talk a little bit about we're going to talk about a few more instances of its application and the positives and negatives of open-mindedness. The negatives are perspective. I'm pretty proud of that diagram. It's sad to erase it, see it go away, but on to new and better things. I'm answering a lot. I don't have anyone particularly answer my question today. It's very strange explaining why someone should be open-minded. It's natural to be inquisitive. It's natural to explore. At a certain point in our lives, we're discouraged from exploring in the ways that we once did as children. So when we're coming to the world, we have no choice but to be open-minded. No choice but to accept everything that's given to us. And trust all the information that's being provided to us by an authority, because they are giving us the provisions. Even if they're not doing it the best they could, we're unaware of that to the extent of we couldn't change it. We couldn't readily change it if we wanted to because of our inexperience to know that something is happening to us. So maturity is key. The level of your open-mindedness is indicative of your maturity. Directly, it is 100% indicative of your maturity. Intellectual maturity, I should specify. Intellectual, and not just that. Guess what? Emotional. So it's always going back to this these objective and subjective things. Intellectual things we know through experience. Emotional things we believe or feel that other people could possibly not be. Alright? So open-mindedness will classify your level of maturity. Right? And this is another big thing. One can never be too open-minded. So if you were to hear different, right? If you're an adult, or if you've heard different, if you've heard throughout your life, oh, you're too open-minded. What is that truly mean? Right, and I've told this in the last one. That means you're accepting things that are potentially harmful to you. So that's not being open-minded. That's being tolerant and accepting. Right? Open-mindedness is the forethought. Okay, so this, and I'll mention this, includes forethought of the actions that you then choose to engage in because you were originally open-minded, because you were exploring, investigative, explorative. So open-mindedness includes the forethought and the analysis of the results that others have had because of these things. And open-mindedness also encourages you to study and understand risks and rewards. Okay? Trying to use tight vocabulary. Things everyone can understand. So in the last video I stated, open-mindedness gives you a better bearings on reality because you are able to classify better objective from subjective. So it is realism, leaving room and considering all options and possibilities, and not just accepting the most extreme versions, right? So open-mindedness is, and people, and this is off, people often separate these things. It's not separated from, but directly and intrinsically, without critical thinking, your open-mindedness is lacking, which is the biggest upset in most people that claim they are open-minded. They lack this very important skill of critical thinking. It is not just something you learned in institutionalized education as a literary analysis tool. You do this with decisions you make. Critically thinking about information that is presented you before you believe it. Yes, it can be used to also potentially understand what somewhat the inferencing. We've got to notice that is subjective. Even though that subjective thought within literary function is based on experience as well. So that experience that you have is objective. Your thoughts of someone else's thoughts and words not coming from them is subjective. So if you don't have it from the source, if you're just reading something, if you are concluding something that was not mentioned, even if it was alluded to, there is not, so whenever we are not certain and we are making an assumption, right, we are inferring. That is that is technically critically thinking, but that is not critically thinking based on observation. It's you looking at something that's not there. You're using what's there to discern something that isn't there or wasn't stated. Something that was implied. Implication, that's the word. I don't have to put it up anymore. The implication of certain text, reading between the lines. If someone implied something, if they said it in different words and you're saying it, that's not inferring, that's redefining, right, with more words. But if your definition becomes something that was not implied, then that is using your own authority to change or potentially pervert, and not in the sexual manner, to pervert someone's intention with their words. This is what happens a lot with institutional education. They teach these literary tactics with artists' works, and they claim these were the intentions of this author. And I have personally invested my time into seeing what the author states about this. Whether it not be something subconscious that the author did, it was something that they said was not implied nor their intention, which is directly, and they weren't the one teaching me. So I was being taught by a teacher that was making these claims that if I did not reach this conclusion, the conclusion that they reached from their understanding of the book, that my conclusion was wrong. Though my conclusion was supported not only by my own analysis, but the analysis thereafter by the author. So this is not something, I don't know how often that happens. People don't often challenge authority. At the time, I did not challenge the authority. I accepted that what my work was inferior, and I learned to play the game in institutionalized education, and I became a student. I did what they wanted, not necessarily what was right. However, I kept inside and understood that I was not going to let school stop me from learning, which exactly what it did oftentimes. So critical thinking. I broke the chalk. In fact, I would say is the most important element of open-mindedness. Critical thinking. Because if it's not there, then and critical thinking does not necessarily mean wrong. So everyone else, everybody has their own ways of doing these things and how they apply to themselves. But there is the most efficient way of doing these things. And with time, with practice, it will become much more familiar, comfortable. But you have to start somewhere. You have to intentionally apply this to your mind and change the way you think, regardless of. Okay, this goes into the next point. Has intellectual consistency that is reasonable, that allows one to determine what is possible. And we've stated that we allow the views to be challenged. That's part of critical thinking. Accepts intellectual maturity, big part. Accepting, I've already went over that. Accepting correction. I hope we went over that. So with this, of course, when we've attained this, when we use this, when we're in it. So this is what I had to learn to do. This is sort of important. Does not force information, but encourages individual search. So due to our own intellectual maturity, which then, by definition, makes you superior in a form, not just a superior human, but you have superior function, like just as certain concentrations of drugs are more give more of an effect, or I figure I didn't have to explain it, but sometimes I have to explain what I mean by that. But it's not a superiority complex. It's a knowledge of a certain inferiority on someone else's part, but then you encourage them to be in line with you encourage them to also increase their own standards. Not to come to your standards specifically, but to increase their own standards so they are superior to their once inferior selves. So that's what I'm stating. The maturity, you are superior to your past self. And if you see a lack of maturity in someone else due to the lack of open-mindedness, which is demonstrated by their actions, this is objective. Whether or not you think they're mature, the actions show that they lack maturity. And this is after you've went through all these steps and critically thought about those actions and what their intention was. You can be empathetic to that. You can understand their actions. Understanding is part of open-mindedness, but does not force information, but encourages individual search. I suppose that I've stated that already. I don't think I have to write that down, but I will. One of the biggest things for me when I was learning and just learning anything I wanted to, learning was my thing. Learning, that is my thing. Was my thing, is my thing. One of the greatest joys in life is knowing information that other people don't know. It used to be a complex of superiority where I found that because I had this over someone that I felt more powerful because of of knowledge that I attained. It wasn't necessarily more intelligence per se, it was more knowledge, which could lend itself to intelligence, which I separate. Intellectual prowess and time spent on attaining certain knowledge are correlated. They're not exclusive to each other. They're not exclusive to each other. But because one with a heightened intellect, a mature, that is intellectually mature, they are going to do things that are amass their knowledge, which is an intellectually mature person, relatively speaking, are more likely, they are always more open-minded. So there are tiers, as I've stated. There's tiers of these things, and it's literally a pyramid that they always draw. I drew yesterday, but that is certainly accurate. You go here, there's building bricks. They stack on top of each other. It's literally like a pyramid. So you got all these individual pieces here stacked upon each other. They all lend itself very well to the structural integrity of this pyramid, right? But some are bearing less weight of the less burden. But notice, here's the implication of this, because it's not that the people up here are superior. Here is the analogy that I'm making. The analogy that I'm making is all of these pieces, and this is not quite the best example because a pyramid is a man-made structure which has no autonomous mobility or manual mobility. It cannot move itself. But because we are humans, we have the ability to shift our positions. And because of birth rates, so these things are on rotation. So how do we signify change? Guess what? You've already done it. It's already there. Delta. The signal, it's already in here. It's the triangle is changing itself. So that's a intentional, example there. These being humans, we were all at this ground layer at some point. We were all here. We were all here at some point. Green for growth. Let's do that. All right. So we're all here at one point. We have the options due to, whether that be due to our environment, we have, there's lots of objective things that influence our subjective thoughts of how we get to these places. But we do have the opportunity, the possibility, the chance to move higher at any time, no matter circumstance. It's still possible. It might be dependent on other people if you're more dependent on other people. Physically, I think the world is unfortunately very unaccustomed so far of how to deal with physically handicapped people or the physically disabled. Even though there are lots of improvements, it's sort of, and this is going to be something that I bet people recognize, but I don't know exactly how many people recognize. It's a pretty modern issue of having physically disabled people that are part of society. That is a relatively modern thing because of modern medicine that keeps people alive and capable, right? So, but the capacity of the capable abilities are limited due to these disabilities, which is a relatively new thing. I hope I can have someone else to teach about that is more knowledgeable. I know a lot about it, but I don't want to. but I will if it comes to it. So we as humans, being both physically capable and intellectually capable, it's easier to get to the top. But at every single point of the way, this top piece these people at the top went through every single one of these levels. As easy as it may have seemed from the outside looking in from us at the bottom, they made this path. Whether or not it seems, easy, and we can't take the same exact path as them, but this space here is not monetary. That space here is intelligence. Intelligence. This is maturity. They have something that we should look to attain. We should look to replicate. And what are those things? Is that thing monetary? I don't say so. That is intellect. What methods did they use to get there? What information do they have? Because they're not in the same pool, so this is a whole nother life. Even here. The people down here often look too high. And then they feel so disadvantaged. You're disadvantaged too. Life is a disadvantage. Sometimes these people press down these people and make it harder. That's quite possibly true. Quite possibly true. But how did they get to that position in the first place? When we were all here at one point. No matter how much people want to say people are born with a silver spoon, the silver spoon means nothing while you're a child to you. You don't get to make an excuse, oh, I'm better than you. You're being taught that. Everything here, this is indoctrination. So just because they're being taught the skills doesn't mean they had it any necessarily easier. They had their own road. So if people start here and get here, they still have to travel. I mean, if we all start here as a baby, we have nothing. But their parents are able to get them here quicker because of resources that they have. So, I mean, I didn't want to get into all that. But this is intellect. This is where I'm aiming for. Where do I sit? I don't know. I hope I'm closer to the top than the bottom. But certainly, some people, I believe that's intellect. Money means nothing to me and really is irrelevant because you give it value. Money is subjective. Like I said, because there's different values, it has different values around the world. You can get different stuff. So it is subjective. It's an objective tool with a subjective use. Okay, got it? Well, it has an objective purpose, but the use around is subjective and its value is subjected to change, which is reasonable. But we are not money. We are being created as that. We are being presented as a commodity. Life didn't naturally. We are Earth's commodity, but we are not a commodity to one another. Does money buy more money? It does. Should it? What's the purpose in that? What is the purpose in that? There's certainly a purpose. There's a constructive. Is it constructive to life? Okay. So there was a point I was making. Hopefully I made it. So not only must we be accepting those with superior intellect know where I'm going. Because open-mindedness is, these both things will go here. Open-mindedness is transactional. Where do I get these things? I don't know. I'm coming up with all this stuff on the spot. I've got notes, but hey, help me out here. So not only do we have to accept We have to be accepting of challenges. But we have to also present challenge. Because of our own open-mindedness, and we've went through all these tools of so purposely being intentional and purposeful, same thing, nearly. Intentional and purposeful of our own open-mindedness and correcting ourselves when we see, and this is where that very important thing of being understanding of people's positions and not forcing information but encouraging it. The presentation of our challenge is imperative of people within that encouragement of open-mindedness. Because the more intelligent the world is, the more intelligent that you can be. The easier it is for you, right? Because other people will think about different things that you are not investing your time right now with. It's a wonderful thing. And it's the degrees of separation. We're a key and we're trying to unlock things, right? And we are a biological key. We are a biological key with veins. We are forever changing. So if we put a delta in there, forever changing, that's just simple as, I mean, that's funny. I'm glad someone came up with that, because before I knew delta, I was infatuated with triangles, like Telly from Sesame Street, yeah? And I draw them all the time. It's a fun thing. But we are a biological key that is, with our open-mindedness, we see and adjust ourselves and attain knowledge, and these things are adjustable. They have mechanisms that will shift itself to either, it'll either get bigger, like one will get extremely bigger, and then the other one will be small, or they have to be the same size. So in order to get in, right? Or opposite, you know what it is, right? Pretty obvious stuff. And maybe you have to change length widths. So maybe one's super skinny, right? And the other one's super fat. And it's like, yo, right? All these different orientations, right? Maybe flip it upside down. Orientations, and not just in terms of the different varieties, options that this key must fit. And the only way we know that is by trying to access the information and the experience with inside, and the things that happen within that experience will determine, and the decisions that we make will determine if we open the door and we have that, and unlocking the door is new knowledge. And then the trying to unlock it is the questioning, is the inquiry. So because we have these parts in us that are forever changing, and not only that, but we are a human. What are we predisposed to? What is so beneficial to human nature, and we live our best lives with it? Other humans and communication. So these orientations, these configurations, through record, as I presented earlier, through record. So these things, someone could already have been here. So through record, other humans' input, we don't have to work as hard. So when we get presented with this information, it's like, oh, the answer's already here, so just configure myself in that way. Because someone else already had the experience, right? And this is a beautiful thing. It's so beautiful because the way you're doing that, when you're presented with a new obstacle, a brand new one, it's weird, man. We get presented with a whole different type of stuff. So that in itself is already sort of intimidating for some people. It looks, this is usually what it looks like, and then we reach unfamiliar territory because of all the things we've been able to access already. So it's like that pyramid. These are things that basically everyone sees, right? But when we get to the top, there's things we've never seen before and challenges we've never been presented with. And we may be the first one to be presented with it, right? But what is our goal? If we are always open-minded, then we are going to have our turn to try to get that open. We're going to use our knowledge, our experiences to figure out a way to unlock these things. Adjust ourselves in every way. Consider our experiences, all these other configurations. See what it's similar to. Look at the area around it, right? And maybe this one's has biological aspects to it as well, right? So if you get it wrong, it keeps changing, right? And that is a very, very good thing. It's too valid, right? And it may present itself as something, as these familiar things, right? So, right, this is what that is. This is what I was presenting earlier. How do you trust something? Outwardly appearing, it looks something highly familiar. And you try everything that you're familiar with, right? And it still doesn't work. Or it gives you a false positive. So you get it in a twist, but it doesn't open, right? So there's false positives. I got into a whole thing. I'm getting excited. But let me calm down a little bit. It's our job and it's our intention as someone, as a learner, to, with our open-mindedness, to see this and understand that this is, the outside is potentially a distraction, right? But because we haven't been presented with that before, it might not be something we understand. But look at everyone else around. If you're not the first one there, then like I said, it's going to adjust for every single time. So someone's already been through. So you ask that person for advice. It's like, hey, and they tell you, look, I want to help you, but that one's a really hard one, and I really, you got to figure that one out for yourself. I have no idea how I got it. It's just guesswork, man. And that potentially something we're presented with. Or someone purposely said, I don't want you here, go away. How'd you even get up here if you don't know how to get it through this door? So there's that challenge of people will put you down for, it may not even be like something way high up. It's just something you've never been presented with before. It doesn't mean what behind that is important. It just means it's a new experience. So someone that may not be technically as skilled as you, or in other aspects is technically superior to you in this regard, because this is something they're experienced with. And they may be jealous of you in another aspect, and try to bring you down a notch and insult and pick at your intelligence. This is what happens very often. And they'll classify you as having behavioral issues and things of that nature. A lot of times your open-mindedness will be attacked by people that are not. So you cannot let that sway you. What your intention has to be is you have to have a focused intention and understanding of the things that will present themselves, the challenges, and the people and things that will be the obstacles that will be in the way of you doing that. So, but ultimately, you get through and you present it with enough to, hopefully, as long as you got the time. If you got the time, the lock's still there. And sometimes there are things that you're going to need other people for. So if this is the most difficult thing in the world, no one's ever been presented with it. It may not be something you can do alone. It may be. It may be. But sometimes, even here, we've got sometimes, so that's for a new thing. So that's a presenting a challenge, accepting things. So you giving them an answer, they're giving you an answer, and then we all work together from that. Sometimes there are these, right? I'm making some pretty good analogies here, actually, that I just come up on the spot, so I hope you all appreciate it. Sometimes there's going to be something that looks like that. And it's going to have familiar aspects. It's going to have the residue of once being of someone having gotten in, right? It's going to have a demonstration of, but it's going to be something that's wild. And usually these sort of locks, because we understand someone's been in it, there are times in our lives we will be presented with locks that we are never capable of understanding, or of accessing. There will be knowledge that will never be capable of accessing. Either it's due to our own inferiority under this thing, or our superiority over it, or because of biological difference. So the most often thing is usually an objective thing that is accessible to some people that exist, but is not accessible to you. So it's like male and female, biologically male, biologically female, or biologically intersex. There are experiences, biological occurrences that they will experience and have knowledge of, objective knowledge due to their physical experience, that you will never be able to experience. You can understand it through, and you can understand it from what is recorded and then presented to you as information that is going to be the only information you trust. So the way you would trust that is seeing the fruits of, if they're, as open-minded as you are, on the same level and have the same intentions, and those demonstrations in a physical world through their actions will present you them as credible or not. Not just the information is credible, but them themselves is credible. So those determinations have to be made with people too. So this could be a particular person that won't let you have access. They'll let you have access to all these things, but they won't let you have access to certain information. And there's biological differences that we'll never be able to experience. There's certain things you won't allow yourself to experience. It could be history. It could be a time and place. Things you can only observe subjectively through recorded material, pictures, literature, video, art, paintings. Things that you'll never have full knowledge of because it's inaccessible to you in the physical world, physically. Right? And there are sometimes ways to get closer fit to these things, to biological. If time travel is possible, travel time backwards is possible. More than the second that some scientists claim you're able to go back a second in time. I don't know what that means. I don't know what that means. I truly don't. Well, I know what it means. I don't understand it because I haven't studied it very well. If you go back in time, maybe you'll have access to it. There's things I don't know, prevent you. But certainly, it would be then on us to have, due to our understanding, and some people may be presented with these challenges and these inquiries earlier than others, regardless of their supposed intellect or open-mindedness. You have different goals, you have different trajectories, different intentions in terms of location and subject. If you are presented with something that you categorically cannot access, it is then on you to understand how far you will go to still trying to access that, or arguing about it and just accepting understanding, and that you won't have full access to that knowledge, whether that's by someone else's force or your own choice, or by, usually that's something you can't control anyway. And then be wary of people that also say that they have this knowledge that is something that they are in the similar respects you cannot possibly have access to due to biological reasons. So that is an understanding and very important conflict that we are presented with today. So it's very important that we utilize all the things that have been set for us by other people, but it's important that we recognize where people have already been, and then on our job, make the work less hard for ourselves, right? Don't try to reinvent the wheel. If you're trying to know the inner workings of something, sure. Like coding, I'm doing that. There are things that make it easier for me to learn and just copy someone else's code. I will be doing that code, but I'm also trying to learn the base layer so I know how to build it up from scratch, just to say if the other resources are available to me for some reason. But utilize the resources that we have available. If you do not, you make it work harder for yourself, and due to certain conditions you are in, you might not be able to find that result with the resources that you have. So absolutely trust all things that you find to be true. That's what Trust All Truth is about. And always keep searching. And utilize the resources, which our people are our best resource, as well as knowledge is our best resource. And being open-minded to determine all those things. There might be one more or a few more lessons of open-mindedness, but that is really the brunt of it. If you have any questions, please leave those comments below, and I will be sure to address them. Thank you all for coming to this lesson. Watch Trust All Truth. Be blessed, stay blessed, and I'll see you all in the next